All right, welcome back and happy 2023. Stronger Together podcast is back and ready to go. And we left off 2022 interviewing some amazing presenters for FETC, which is just around the corner. And as we kick off 2023, we're going to do the same. We have a few interviews scheduled for today, tomorrow, and we're going to keep going because this event is the largest event of bringing our ed tech specialists, principals, superintendent, coaches, everything in education together, because I think it is one of the only events that has different tracks that brings everyone together. It really exemplifies what Stronger Together means. And I'm going to bring in one of our presenters here today. He has a full slate, and as you can see, I have a guest here who just wants to say hi to everybody. He will not leave us alone. He's just hanging out and wants to be part of the podcast in 2023. I guess he thinks I need a co-host. So we are going to bring in Patrick, who is at work, sadly. He's back at work today, but we're going to be ready to hear some of the great things that he's doing as he prepares himself for FETC and the work of 2023. So Patrick, welcome in.
Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here. Glad to be joining, even if it is from work. I'm happy to be back. It was nice having some relaxing time at home with friends and family, but definitely ready to get back into it, collaborate with some teachers and students.
Awesome. So for those out there watching and listening who don't know you and your work, tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Yeah. I'm Patrick Hausammann. I am situated in Berryville, Virginia for work. It is as far north as you can go. It's right in between Winchester and Route 81 and Washington, D.C., Loudoun County. So very much Northern Virginia, but we're in a rural county. So we have a lot of students that maybe don't have some connectivity, but we also more so have students that maybe wouldn't experience a lot without tech. And that goes right into my world of technology integration. I'm supervisor of instructional technology. I'm also a coach for two of our buildings for tech. And I get the honor of being our new teacher program coordinator as well. So I get to wear a few different hats, which is the gift of the small school. Whenever you start working your way up, you get to wear a bunch of hats, but I love the different roles and I love getting to work with a variety of people I do.
No, it sounds that way for sure. So how did you get into that role? Like, it always interests me to hear people's pathway into the ed tech space.
So I'm originally from Pennsylvania, real close to Central PA and Williamsport area where Little League World Series happens, little town called Hughesville. And not so much right now, unfortunately, but when I was there about 12 years ago or so, when I graduated, teachers weren't in demand, but there was not many jobs. So
I
went through my undergrad, I went through my master's, I subbed a couple years, I kept interviewing for jobs, kept coming up with we really like you, but we want to hire somebody with experience. And at that point, we had tons of people coming back with experience. One job, I was number 2 to somebody that had 7 years of experience. One, they had like 12 years of experience. And at that point, we had hundreds of people in PA applying for like every job that opened. I wish we still had that going on now, but from there, my master's was instructional technology, undergrad was social studies. I started looking at what roles might be able to tie in the tech part and maybe a little less in the content, and it didn't really exist that much in PA then. So Virginia had a job called an ITRT, or Instructional Technology Resource Teacher.
Sure.
And that lined up really nicely, and I got my first job in Woodbridge in Prince William County, and then realized I wasn't super city person. I like the rural side of things, the small town where I was from. Applied at Clark, got hired there, and have been there since. And the role has just kind of kept evolving. I was an ITRT, also taught some of my own classes, then just an ITRT, then the supervisor, then new teachers been added on most recent.
Wonderful. So one of the things I did want to dive into before we talk a little FETC, it always interests me to talk about why individuals are in this role. And when I went onto your website, which, by the way, for those of you who are watching, I'm going to throw down below, make sure to check out all the great work that he is doing. But this is one of the first things you see when you walk in. You take great pride and satisfaction in helping others achieve their highest levels through pairing great pedagogy or coaching with innovative technology to yield endless promises for students, teachers, colleagues, friends, families, and businesses. Tell us a little about that. That seems like a lot to take on, but where did that purpose come from?
Yeah, so throughout a lot of my work, one of my biggest kind of pushes is not only to keep continuing bettering myself, keep learning, keep growing myself, but also to align that with helping others. I,
Okay.
as you know, as you've checked out, I also help lead a nonprofit called Unison EDU that is all about helping educators get connected to the resources and people they need. But my big push and one of the biggest things that gives me satisfaction and keeps me pushing forward is when I can help turn that light bulb on in others, help make that final connection that makes that thing work and drives whether it's their pedagogy forward or whether it's a family member that's trying to master the iPhone or the new update that came out for this thing, or a business that's like, man, we just don't have money for a big website. Can you help us do a Google site and get off the ground?
Sure.
Something like that that lays a foundation or builds that connection. That's really connects to my why of helping others achieve. And at the same time, through helping them, it helps me keep learning, help me keep growing and achieving too.
So you briefly talked about Unison Ed.
Mhm.
Tell us what that is and the purpose of that group. And
So
I'm
that
and
group came about as part of my Google Innovator project. I was part of the 2018 LAX group for Google Innovator. And my idea going into it was I really wanted some way for me to launch myself out there to help more people.
Mhm.
And then in typical fashion, whenever you go to whether it's Google Innovator or I'm part of the 2019 ASCD Emerging Leader class, whenever you go to something like that, it is okay, well, you're thinking here. What's your moonshot thought? Like, how can you make
Right.
that bigger? How can you make an even bigger impact? So then it went from what can I do to what can I do to maybe assemble a group to not only make an impact here, but as wide as I possibly can. And that's where Unison became the idea of why not found a nonprofit, pull a group together that can help not just a few people, but entire schools, entire districts.
Mhm.
And the whole point of that group is again to connect any educator in need, whether they're a teacher, a tech coach, an instructional coach, an admin, with somebody that can help them answer their questions or come in and lead PD for their themselves, their school, their district. And there's I can't launch anything out yet because it's still kind of being talked about behind the scenes, but there's some exciting stuff likely coming in the very near future with Unison, a fairly big partnership, and a couple new things coming down.
All right. Well, make sure to check that out. Website is below all that great work from Patrick and Unison as well. We're really excited about that. Follow the website or check them out on Twitter as well. So we are going to dive into your next adventure, which is heading down to New Orleans. I mean,
Mhm.
you have what, one, two, three, 4 sessions here. My goodness, let's dive into a couple that you wanted to talk about, and then I definitely wanted to talk about. I had Eric Kurtz on recently and shared your name as well. So take it away. Where do you want to start? And for those going to New Orleans, what would they expect from the sessions that you're going to be leading?
Yeah, super excited to be making my way back to FETC. I've gone a number of times over the years. Last year, I was accepted to present, I think, at least this many, if not even a couple more sessions, but it ended up being the exact week that our little guy was born on the
Oh,
19th of
geez.
January 2022. So I had to send Jen a line and say, I would love to come, but I don't think I'd have a house to come back to. So
That was
I'm
a
not going to be
smart
able to
move.
make it this time. But I'm super excited about all the sessions. And this is something that I'll give a shout out to Eric Kurtz here too with the hipster Google session. We've both done kind of a hidden Google, lesser known Google tools type of session over the years. And as somebody that's been in ed tech for a little while, but not reached the level that I would see Eric at, it was one of those things where I've met him through Google Innovator circles before. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to just take a chance and launch this out to this person I see as kind of a really high level person in my field. Let's see if they want to collaborate. Let's just take a
Mhm.
chance. And I sent that line and he's like, "Oh, absolutely. Let's do this. Let's make it happen." Like there wasn't a hesitation. We jumped on a few Zoom calls, some Google Meets and talked about it, and the idea came together to not just make it even like a share out, but kind of kick it up a notch and make it so we're kind of going back and forth and kind of have a little bit of a competitive approach to it so that it's more of a yeah, well, you have this tool. What about this one? And then we're going to have an audience vote component to it too. So it's not only going to be us kind of collaborating, going back and forth, but we're going to bring the audience in so that they can have some kind of input there throughout too. And one thing I will say when the graphic came out initially, it was noted as a workshop, but it's actually a concurrent session. So
Okay.
make sure you get to that one because unfortunately we're going to be limited to 45 minutes, but there'll be a ton of resources coming your way. And as always, when two really kind of googly guys get together and kind of nerd out, it's gonna be an experience.
So what would be one that you would make sure everybody knows? What's a tool you think that you use a lot that other people might have never heard of?
Oh, it's a good one. I'm gonna have to say probably my biggest one and one of my go-tos is Google Arts and Culture, and it's getting around more. So there's going to be probably a number of people that know it, but it's one of those ones where you want to keep checking back because there's constantly new stuff. But it's essentially one of Google's tools where they're trying to go literally around the world to categorize all the different artifacts and museums and different things out there into one place so that you don't have to leave your school, you don't have to leave your classroom to have experiences around the world. And in connection to that, a lot of the Google expeditions, those tours, those virtual field trips that existed, those hundreds of things are now part of Google Arts and Culture. There's a bunch of different experiments and things out there that are just added features and really cool stuff you can dive into.
Okay.
And just a tons of things there. There's a learn page that gives you lesson plans. So it's something where a lot of people might have seen it, might have played maybe with some blob opera or some of the fun games off to the sides, but definitely some awesome educational connections in multiple content areas.
Awesome. So that was like 3 minutes. Get into that session, and there's another 42 minutes of that level of content and sharing and tools as well. And one of the sessions I saw on your menu of sorts, which a
Mhm,
lot, like you said, are 2 hours. You're going to be busy.
mhm.
Um, was around student-led learning. So, in your thought process, what does that mean to have structured student-led learning?
Yeah, so for me, that session is all about ways to kind of package learning that students can work through at their own pace and kind of lead themselves. Obviously, that teacher's going to be in the room. They're going to be more of that coach in the middle. I've heard a lot of times the guide on the side, but I really like the idea of being more the coach in the middle, and you're constantly working around the room. You're in it with the students. You're answering questions. You're helping them kind of discover things on their own, maybe planting little seeds. But different things within that are things like hyperdocs and choice boards and going into something like the Teach Better Teams grid method, things like that, where you can really have a research backed structure that allows you to kind of, if you want to launch right in, but I would recommend incrementally working into that student led learning where not only do they have that voice and choice, but they're building in that agency component where they're actually beginning to lead it. They're discovering, they're choosing how they learn and choosing how they're showing it.
So, speaking of that, and I want to kind of take a detour for a minute because one of the things that I saw that you were doing is really close to my heart, and some of the work that I've done is around mentoring or the new teacher program.
Mhm.
So, how are you? So, first, tell us about that, and then how are you going to get those new teachers to really incorporate some of the strategies that you just spoke about?
Yeah, so I helped with the program a number of years now that we have, but then somebody retired a couple years back and I took it on as kind of the lead person. And something we've continually done as part of that program is work to emphasize the mentorship side versus meetings and different things like that. Trainings and things were great, but they don't have the effect that bond that you get with a mentor that's working side by side, hopefully within your school building. In a lot of cases, we've been able to pair them with somebody in their grade level, but that bond you can get there working with somebody that's been in a classroom for years has really made a big impact on our program to have that partnership, have that work, and then pairing that with maybe a needs assessment throughout the year so that we can funnel more resources, funnel different trainings and things to them. But our emphasis has really shifted towards that really strong and obviously pointed straight to this podcast, that stronger together side of things that we don't want anybody to feel like they're standing alone, even if they're a teacher that has 20 years of experience. If they just starting with us, we want to give them that mentor and help them have that leg up.
No, wonderful, and it sounds like you're doing more than like you said earlier. You're wearing a lot of hats. You're also supervising instructional technicians. Is that
Instructional technology. So that for us, we're very small. So we have one other tech coach. So I help lead him and kind of supervise, collaborate with him. But the biggest probably part of that role is twofold. I also created and lead our approved technology list. So I help review all the different technologies. I work on the budget side of things for that. And then I also coordinate a lot of our trainings and things to help really make that shift from tech use, like one off, I'm going to use it just because it's shiny, it's new, to
Mhm.
more of a tech integration side and trying to lead that and make sure that's our emphasis.
I like it, and I think one of the parts of the instructional technology is bringing that student engagement. And I know
Hmm.
jumping back to FETC, that's one of your sessions is the
Hmm.
6 pack of tools that can transform student engagement, and that's a 2 hour session. So,
Hmm.
what are participants going to be learning from that 2 hours and take away with them when they head back to wherever their district is?
Yeah, so there's a number of different things in there, and I can definitely help people rest assured that if you come for the 2 hour session, you're going to have something going on for that 2 hours. And
Hmm.
it's definitely not going to be me talking for 2 hours because I think I have a nice voice, and my little guy that's just about a year old, he definitely likes it. But you probably don't want to listen to me just talk for 2 hours. So it's definitely going to be interactive. And in this case, in this session, there's going to be 6 different tools that we'll do a brief intro into, just in case anybody is new with them. Make sure people know how they work. Give a few different examples of how they could be used, and then each chunk will have a little piece of workshop time. Where my hope is by the end of that session, at least half of those tools you will have used it and created something you can actively use when you're on the flip side of FETC, whether that's something with Adobe Express or Wakelet or jumping into Canva and all the different things they have. You not only leave with resources, but you have some things you can actually use that next day you're in with students.
I like that, and I think that's incredibly important to have that something, that takeaway that you can put into place, because sometimes I see events where teachers have these grandiose ideas, and a year later I say, "Hey, how'd it go?" And like I'm still trying to work it out, but
Mm-hmm.
having those practical tools really is critical into to making your work come alive. And so, speaking of coming alive, one of the things your final session, well, actually, it's your first one, but the final one we'll talk about is bringing the world to your classroom using the tools
Mm-hmm.
like Google tools. What is that? Like, that's a world that I haven't experienced yet using some of the geo tools.
Yeah, so that's another one where I think a lot of us have probably experienced over the years. If you've been in a computer lab, you've been with kids, and you open the older version of Google Earth that's actually downloaded on the computer. There was 2 things instantly any kid I ever introed the tool to went to. Number one, everybody can probably guess, where's my house? What's it look like on Google Earth? And
Yeah.
then the downloadable version actually had a flight simulator. And as soon as they found that, it was gone. Not only were we looking at our house, but we were flying through the world, checking everything out. But Google has made it much more accessible in the fact that you don't have to download a program, you don't have to install a program. Google Earth now works on the web. You also have programs like we talked about before, Google Arts and Culture, Google My Maps, and all of those programs. We still have some of the issues as far as connectivity. We know how
Sure.
intensive Google Earth is, so you need to be thinking about equity piece there and making sure that all your students can actually connect and use it. But you can instantly be around the world. You can be checking things out, seeing what it looks like. But a lot of these will have some experience built in too, where you can see a time lapse of what it looks like to look at a glacier 20 years ago. And what does it look like today? What does
Right.
a water source look like 20 years ago? What does it look like today? And then you can kick it up another notch and actually have students create a flying tour that goes around the world and tells a story about something they're studying and learning. And it doesn't have to just be geography or social studies. We've looked at different discoveries and people that made them in science classes. We've done things like the Google Lit trips, where you follow a character through a story and create the different markers and create images, icons that go with them.
Okay.
And really, we've used different things like that from first grade all the way up through when kids graduate. And it's really just a matter of scaffolding that experience, adjusting those requirements, what they're going to do, but also building in some time. And this is the one that's the hardest because time is possibly the most precious commodity, I think, in education a lot of times. But
Sure.
having some time to let the kids explore too, not just telling them everything they have to do, but you're going to create this thing. And try and find some tools, try and find some features that we never knew existed. And some of the best creations I've seen students come up with is when there's been, even if it's 5 minutes in a chunk of time, giving them some of that time to explore.
Yeah, that's critically important. I think that is what I like about the work that you do. You're always bringing it together. You're bringing in that engagement. You're bringing in the practical tools. So for those of you heading down to New Orleans, make sure to check out the sessions. Here they are again, all 4 sessions. And as you said, the January 25th one is actually 45 minutes here. So make sure to check that out, as well as all those great resources and tools. Patrick's website is down below.
Mm-hmm.
Visit that for all the wonderful things that's happening. And I look forward to hearing what's coming next for Unison EDU and all the great work there. But the last thing I wanted to share and ask you to share, I ask all of our guests, what does Stronger Together mean to you?
Stronger Together for me just means that no person, whether it's in education or it's somebody that's in your circles, no person within any of those circles, any of those professional learning networks, whatever you might call it, ever feels like they're alone or they're being left behind. Everybody's being pulled up, being helped out. And at the same time, not only are we keeping each other together, but we're continuing to push people to get stronger, to keep moving forward, discovering those new things and not being okay with just we're doing it just because it's the way it's always been.
I like it. Well, thanks for taking the time today. I look forward to meeting you in person in a few weeks down in New Orleans, and have a great kickoff to your day at work, and best of luck for all the things that are coming your way in 2023.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
And for all of our viewers and listeners, make sure to continue to check in throughout this month as we highlight our FETC presenters and many other educators as well. And as I continue to say, stay stronger together and make sure we put we over me.